of a sadistic streak.
I met Mary when a child in my class came in one morning and had a mark on her cheek. When I asked her what it was, she said that Mary had stubbed out a cigarette on her cheek. And nice enough for Mary, along came this little girl and I said to her, have you done this? And Mary said, oh yes. And I said, well, I'm just sorry for what you've done. Yes.
Although Mary's violent behaviour was noticed by her teachers, tragically nothing was done to address her problems. And at home she was exposed to the grim world of her mother's prostitution and her father's drunkenness.
Mary was influenced by all of these things. She saw very strange behaviour going on through her own mother's actions and by her father's actions and by the local community. She was deeply embedded in a sort of petty crime environment, an environment in which violence against each other was something that was almost acceptable and the norm.
Next door to Mary Bell in White House Road, there lived another girl called Bell, who was no relation. She was Norma Bell, 2 years older than Mary, but much less bright. Mary was always the leader.
Because she had some followers on, she felt maybe led to do things that maybe she wouldn't have done on her own. But she could dominate people quite easily. If Mary was to tell Norma to jump off the Tyne Bridge, she would jump off the Tyne Bridge. That was one of the jokes at the time.
It was a question of the two wrong people coming together, one to bolster the courage of the other one, probably. One the leader, nearly always, and one weaker intellectually. And this was the case with Norma Bell, easily led, nothing near as bright as Mary Bell.
The children of Scotswood had come to fear Mary and Norma, with some reason. On Saturday, the 11th of May, 1968, Mary and Norma had picked up a boy, aged 3, and taken him to buy some sweets. Sometime later, he was found wandering, dazed and bleeding. The police and an ambulance were called, but no action was taken. The next day, the mother of a local girl complained to the police that Mary Bell had attempted to strangle her daughter whilst playing in a sandpit. But once more, despite all the signs, nothing was done to take Mary in hand.
Norma pinned us down, and Mary had grabbed us by the neck and started like strangling us. And then she was had a hard time just getting the sand and then pouring at my mouth, and it couldn't go in quick enough, and she tried to stuff her fingers down, basically, to go further down. And obviously I was terrified. And I think Norma was a little bit frightened when she seen what Mary was doing, because Norma jumped up. And by that time, she had jumped up, and I managed to struggle and get free and run home.
After the attack on Pauline, the police were called, but no further action was taken. Little Pauline had not told the full story.
I was terrified of telling the police everything. I know I didn't tell them everything. I know I told them I'd been like strangled, but I didn't mention the sound because I was frightened. I was frightened of that effects in case she got hold of this afterwards. And it haunts us.
Two weeks later, on Saturday the 25th of May, Martin Brown, a 4-year-old Scotswood boy, was playing outside with his friend.
Buenas noches, Nana Pocket 24.
He was quite tall for his age and well built. Blonde curly hair, blue eyes, and eyelashes. You've seen nothing like them.
Por cierto, estamos viendo el caso de Mary Bell.
He had a very cheeky face and he was mischievous. Like when he decided to have a swimming pool in the bedroom when he filled a bottom drawer full of water and more flooded. Things like that used to get up.
Por ahí si nos están viendo en el chat, nada más díganme si están teniendo algún tipo de problema. Yo aquí estoy transmitiendo a 720 y no me está marcando ninguna bajada en en la señal, está
It was
perfecto.
quite usual for young children to be out playing in the derelict buildings of
hola.
Grass Alley.
Hola, Gris.
And Martin's family weren't concerned at first by his long absence. But at 5 o'clock, a neighbour called to say that he had had an accident.
I ran up to the houses and I seen a crowd of people standing outside, and this guy had Martin in his hands, and he was grey.
Si dicen que todo está bien, voy a subir la salida, a ver si se cambia, la voy a subir un poquitito, justo
And
de
this man was
salida.
tears running down his face, and I said, "Is he all right?" He says, "I don't know, I don't know."
La tengo a
And
720,
at that,
30
two
cuadros por
hours men just
segundo,
rushed past,
a
grabbed him,
2.5
ran
megabytes.
past
La voy a
us
subir a
again,
720,
running the ambulance.
264, a 3.8.
Martin Brown was taken from the derelict house to the local
Ese es el
Newcastle
máximo de
hospital.
calidad que puedo lanzar a 720 antes de pasar a 1440.
I was devastated.
Cámara, si se ve mejor, si se barre. Ay, perdón por el desastre, estoy trabajando al mismo tiempo.
Because Martin's body had been found in mysterious circumstances upstairs inside an abandoned house, the police were called in to investigate the cause of death.
At first I thought maybe some tablets, but that's just because there were some tablets lying around. The previous tenant of the house, which was then empty, had left these tablets around the floor. The pathologist carried out an extensive examination of the boy's throat, but couldn't come to the conclusion that it was violent or not other than a natural death.
There was a few theories, like he's maybe getting to the top of the stairs and being frightened to come down because he once fell down the stairs when he was very little. And I said, well, he could have sort of gotten a shock. They started calling Martin a rat alley boy, which really hurt.
¿El qué?
It did really hurt.
Ahorita voy, déjame, permíteme tantito.
Rats, you know, I mean, it's a terrible thing to do to a small child.
2 days later, Monday the 27th of May, police were called to a Scotswood nursery close to Mary and Norma Bell's homes. There had been a break-in, and officers found 4 pieces of paper. Scribbled on one were the words, "I murder so that I may come back," and "We murder, watch out," and on another, "We did murder Martin Brown." At the time, the notes were dismissed by the police as a nasty, childish game.
The general tenor of these notes was to tease and provoke the police because the police weren't making any progress in their investigation, that they weren't getting anywhere with it, which was remarkable. But I'm absolutely certain that was Mary's doing, because Norma presented as a very pathetic child, and Mary obviously dominated her.
That same Monday, Mary Bell went to school as usual.
Me voy a
and
pasar
wrote
un
in her
poquito,
school
el 720 es
newsbook.
el máximo que vamos a usar.
There were crowds
Pero
of people beside an old
voy a
house.
probar
I asked what was the matter.
la
There has been
siguiente.
a boy who just laid down and died.
Que ahí sí es un poquito...
She drew a
Nunca la vamos a
picture of
usar,
the
ya es
dead body of Martin
1080
Brown, and next to
a
it, a bottle and a
4.5.
pill
No creo que
by
lleguemos
which
nunca,
she
porque
wrote
todos mis videos
tablet.
los paso a 720. Pero ahí
Mary
vamos,
also showed a
1000,
workman
va a
finding the
1080.
body.
Díganme si notan el cambio,
This
por
went
favor.
unnoticed for weeks.
Bueno, pero es que con la transmisión de YouTube no se va a poder. A ver con la cámara. A ver si ya cambió a 1080. Debe verse todo más nítido, más...
After I lost Martin, every time I went up and they were sitting in my sister's house, they would ask questions like, how do you feel? Are you missing him? Which I thought was concern on their part for me, you know.
Regresamos al caso, a ver.
Isn't it nice to really care how I feel?
Y sí, estamos a 1080 y no me está marcando ningún bajón. Estamos ahorita en una subida de 12 megabytes. Wow, está bien.
So I just looked like blank at them, you know. And I said to the youngest of the two, Mary, she was littler than the other one. I said, wait, you can't see Martin's dead. She says, I know he's dead. She says, I want to see him in his coffin. With that, I slammed the door
Ya veré
and
los cambios en la repetición también.
I just collapsed behind the
Cambios
door.
de calidad.
And my husband had to come get us now to send for the doctor.
2 months passed that summer in Newcastle without incident, but the case of Martin Brown was not forgotten. Without a known cause, his death was blamed on the dangerous conditions in the Rat Alley slums.
Oh, Newcastle reacted to this situation in perhaps the traditional ways of shock and horror. The murder had occurred in a part of the city which was being demolished for slum clearance reasons, and the local population marched to complain that this was not being done properly and effectively. And the strange thing was, the little figure at the front of the march carrying one of the banners was Mary Bell.
Procura traer pocas cosas o te puedes caer.
There was a young killer at large who, despite all the signs, the notes, the newsbook, the previous violent incident, was not apprehended. Tragically, another death was inevitable. On Wednesday, the 31st of July, Brian Howe, a 3-year-old, was, like so many children in Scotswood, playing unsupervised in the streets. He went to watch the demolition of derelict houses in Rat Alley. A little later, Mary Bell picked him up and took him off with Norma to play on a nearby patch of waste ground called the Tin Lizzie. He was never seen alive again.
We heard that he had gone missing, and obviously we didn't connect it with.
Ahorita en el minuto 12 de la transmisión voy a cambiar a 7:20 para ver si noto el cambio en la repetición.
You know, or he was lost.
Es el con el que nos vamos a quedar.
And it wasn't till late at night, and we had all the police calls.
We looked out and there was some big lamps on.
Ahorita tenemos a Nena Gris y al Lord Siniestro.
You know, you could see, actually see the people milling around on the Tin Lizzie. And you could hear the dogs bark, and so we knew it was the police. And I says, what's happened? She says, I found little Brian Howe and he's been murdered. Oh, totally devastated. I mean, I never gave a second thought that it had any connection with Mason.
When I got there was uniformed police officers there.
Ay, 12 minutos.
Had the area cordoned off and examined the boy. The little boy had fair blonde curly hair.
Ahí a ver si lo notan, bajo a 720, 60 cuadros por segundo, 3.8. Es el que creo que se va a quedar ya como definitivo. 60 cuadros. A ver, chequen si notan la diferencia, por favor, y díganme si se ve mejor.
I was head of CID at this time. On unusual murders, I was called out, well, practically every time. And this was a call early morning. I think it was about 1 or 2 o'clock. Called to this scene because the boy
60 cuadros por segundo, a ver si lo veo barrido o algo.
Lying, semi-spread eagle, really, half naked, lying amongst the concrete and the bushes.
I noticed that there had been snippets of the boy's hair cut off and lying nearby, and his little legs showed that there was puncture wounds in the calves of the legs and other areas of the legs. And it seemed to indicate that perhaps the scissors or whatever had been used to cut the boy's hair had also been used to puncture his legs.
The first thing one noticed was the unusual cut marks to the legs. First time I'd ever seen that, of course, and one immediately could see that they'd been caused after death. I gained the impression at the time that the person responsible must have been rather young because of the gentleness of the death. It required a post-mortem examination, and that followed straight away.
The post-mortem showed that Brian Howe had been strangled and that the cut marks were naive attempts to leave initials on the body. The pathologist concluded it was the work of a child. Given the similarities with the death of little Martin Brown, the police now reopened his case too and went to see his mother in Scotswood.
They said, well, you better sit down, we've got something to tell you. And then there was with a bombshell that they'd looked back into Martin's death and they weren't 100% certain but they were 60% sure that Martin had been murdered as well. Couldn't believe it.
To the horror of the local community, the police now announced that they were searching for a child. And amid the hundreds of suspects, one child, Mary Bell, seemed to want to draw attention to herself.
Whenever I held, or anyone else held a conference, this one girl's face kept appearing, listening intently to everything that was being said. One couldn't miss her. If you tried, she was obviously pushing herself forward to listen to what was being said.
¿Iba a la universidad donde Enderman?
It was common knowledge amongst the children of Scotswood that Mary and Norma had been up to no good. Mary had already boasted in the playground that she had strangled the boy, and many had experienced the little girl's assaults at first hand.
I think everybody half thought, well, they knew. Well, everybody who went to Delver Road School knew what she was like. I think everybody sort of around our area was waiting for something to happen because of what she used to get up to.
After a conference and discussion, we decided it was time to have a word with Mary Bell.
Pues bueno, creo que para hacer una prueba ya, que ya fueron más de 30 minutos y no tuvimos un solo bajón a pesar de la alta calidad. Pues bueno, creo que así se va a quedar. Ya vamos a tener programa el miércoles en vivo, por fin, con buena calidad. Gracias a los que se conectaron para darme su opinión. De todos modos, ahorita yo checo la repetición. Y después de checar la repetición, borro esta prueba para que no se queden las listas. Gracias a todos. Que tengan un super fin de semana. Ahí se ve un duende. Que tengan un super fin de semana. Y yo sigo con las pruebas porque si notan el canal de Fantasmas, ya subí 4 videos nuevos. Los pude subir en 5 minutos, cuando antes me tardaba 1 hora. Subieron en 5 minutos. Subí el del exorcista, subí las 3 partes al mismo tiempo en 8 minutos. Estuvo muy bien. Pues bueno, vean las repeticiones y gracias por estar aquí. Nos vemos el miércoles.
Adiós. Hola y adiós.